This girl reveals a secret about the deceased daughter of a millionaire. Then moments later, something terrible happens. Comment. Giving my story a rating from 0 to 10, your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The silence in the main hall of the funeral home was broken when a small child, just 4 years old, approached the sealed casket. Her bare feet made an almost imperceptible noise against the cold marble floor, and her dirty clothes contrasted sharply with the solemn environment. The girl looked like an apparition that had appeared out of nowhere, her disheveled hair framing a thin face that carried a wisdom impossible for her age. The 30-year-old widowed millionaire watched the scene from the back of the hall, his impeccable silhouette standing out among the mourners. His fortune, accumulated through investments in Wall Street stocks, had provided him with a life of luxury, but none of that mattered in this moment of absolute pain. His red eyes fixed on the strange child approaching his daughter's casket. "She's not in there," the little beggar girl whispered, her small voice echoing through the deathly silent hall. The man approached slowly, feeling the weight of the curious gazes of those present. "What did you say, child?" "Your daughter isn't in the casket," the girl repeated, gently touching the polished wood with her small, dirty fingers. "She told me she wanted to be somewhere else when the time came." A murmur ran through the gathered mourners. The stepmother of the deceased child, a woman of cold and calculating appearance, approached with irritation etched on her face. "What nonsense is this? How dare this street urchin interrupt our moment of mourning?" The millionaire raised his hand, silencing his wife. Something about the beggar girl's certainty disturbed him deeply. "How did you know my daughter?" "She used to visit me," the child replied with devastating simplicity. "We talked through the hospital's ventilation grates. She told me about the birds she saw from the window and how she wanted to fly free like them." The wealthy man's heart stopped for a moment. Those details, only his daughter would know about her obsession with birds, about how she spent hours watching them from her hospital room window. How could a street child know these intimate secrets? "That's impossible," the stepmother murmured, but her voice trembled slightly. "Our daughter was always under strict medical supervision." The beggar girl looked directly into the millionaire's eyes, and he saw there a pain that mirrored his own. "She told me you never listened when she tried to talk about what she really wanted. She said you only saw the illness, never her." The words hit the man like punches to the stomach. His obsession with absolute control had always led him to make all medical decisions, all treatments, without ever asking his daughter what she wanted. Guilt began to eat away at his chest like acid. "If she's not in the casket, where is she?" he asked, his voice breaking. "In the place where she chose to be," the girl replied. "But first, you need to see what they left in her place." The millionaire looked around the hall, seeing the shocked faces of those present, the furious expression of his wife, the general confusion that had set in. His most remarkable characteristic, absolute control over all situations, was being brutally tested. "Open the casket," he ordered, his voice echoing through the hall. "Have you lost your mind?" exclaimed the stepmother. "You can't take the words of a disturbed child seriously." But the millionaire had already made his decision. When he had accumulated his wealth through risky deals and bold investments, he had learned to trust his instincts, even when everyone around him doubted. And at that moment, all his instincts screamed that the girl was telling the truth. The funeral home employees hesitated, but the man's authority and money spoke louder. With careful movements, they opened the sealed casket before all those present. What they found inside left the hall in absolute silence. There was no body, only stones carefully arranged to simulate the weight of a child, and a white envelope in the center, sealed with red wax. The millionaire took the letter with trembling hands, his fingers struggling against the seal. The message was short, written in his daughter's delicate handwriting. Daddy, when you read this, I'll already be where I've always wanted to be. Don't look for me in the places where you think I should be. Look for me where I chose to stay. The girl knows the way. The paper trembled in the rich man's hands as he reread the impossible words. His daughter had planned all this. How? When? And why did that strange child seem to know more about his daughter's last days than he himself did? Where is she? He asked the beggar girl, his voice now full of despair. That's for you to find out, the child replied, beginning to walk away. But first, you need to understand why she chose to leave. Wait! The millionaire shouted, but the girl was already heading for the exit. She told me that when you were ready to really listen, I should come back, the child said, stopping at the door. Until then, she'll be where she always wanted to be. And with these enigmatic words, the beggar girl disappeared into the crowd on the street, leaving behind a hall of mourners in shock and a devastated father with more questions than answers. The millionaire looked again at the empty casket, at the letter in his hands, and felt his world of certainties crumble completely. 3 weeks had passed since the funeral that had turned into a nightmare. The millionaire couldn't sleep, eat, or work properly. His construction company, built over years of calculated investments and precise decisions, was beginning to show signs of neglect. Important contracts were lost, meetings cancelled, and his obsession with finding answers consumed every second of his existence. The stepmother had locked herself in the master bedroom of the mansion, refusing to talk about what had happened at the funeral home. When she finally emerged, 3 days later, she brought with her news that would change everything even more. "I'm pregnant," she announced, placing a protective hand over her still flat stomach. 2 months along. I need you to forget this morbid obsession and focus on the family we still have. The man stared at her in disbelief. How can you think about moving on when my daughter might be, when we don't even know where she is? Your daughter is gone, the woman replied with cutting coldness. And you need to accept that. This baby I'm carrying is our future, not the ghosts of the past. The revelation created a chasm between them. While she planned the future, he remained trapped by unanswered questions. His characteristic of absolute control was being tested in ways he had never imagined possible. How to control a situation where all the rules had been broken. He decided to look for the beggar girl. For weeks, he scoured the streets of the great industrial metropolis, investigated makeshift shelters, talked to homeless people, but the child had simply disappeared. It was as if she had never existed, except for the vivid memories of that devastating moment in the funeral home. It was during one of these searches that he met the nurse from the hospital where his daughter had spent the last few months. The woman, middle-aged and with eyes full of compassion, recognized him immediately. "Sir, I took care of your daughter for several nights," she said, approaching hesitantly. "I'm so sorry for your loss." "Did you know a street child who visited the hospital?" he asked urgently. "A small child, 4 years old, very thin." The nurse hesitated, looking around nervously. "I shouldn't be talking about this. The hospital's rules are strict regarding unauthorized visitors." "Please," the millionaire pleaded, his voice breaking. "I need to understand what happened to my daughter." After a long silence, the woman sighed deeply. "Your daughter mentioned a special friend. She said she talked to her through the hospital's ventilation system. I always thought they were fantasies caused by the medication. But did you ever see this child?" "Once," the nurse admitted, guilt weighing on her voice. "It was late at night during my shift. I saw a small silhouette in the maintenance corridors. When I went to check, I didn't find anyone, but there were small footprints in the dust on the floor." The man felt a chill run down his spine. "Where is this ventilation system?" "In the hospital's basements. But, sir, it's dangerous and restricted. You can't—" "I have to see," he interrupted, his determination renewed. That same night, using his influence and some strategic bribes, the millionaire gained access to the hospital's ventilation tunnels. What he found there left him speechless. In a wider section of the system, There were clear signs that someone had created a small hideout. Old blankets, leftover food, and more importantly, children's drawings pasted on the metal walls. There were hundreds of drawings of birds, birds flying, birds on branches, birds singing, and on each of them 2 signatures, one in his daughter's delicate handwriting, another in the shaky letters of a child still learning to write. But it was what he found in a small box hidden behind the drawings that shook him completely. They were his daughter's jewels, the pearl necklace she had received on her last birthday, the gold earrings that had belonged to her biological mother, the diamond bracelet that he himself had bought, all there, abandoned, as if they had no value whatsoever. Along with the jewelry, there was a stack of notes handwritten by his daughter. Upon reading them, the millionaire discovered a truth that shattered him. His daughter had been secretly selling her expensive jewelry to buy food for street children. The notes detailed each transaction, each meal purchased, each child helped. Today, I sold Daddy's ring and bought sandwiches for 5 children. They were so hungry they cried when they ate. I've never seen anyone cry with happiness because of food, one of the notes read. Another revealed, the little girl who lives in the tunnels told me she never had a real friend. I promised I would be her friend forever. She taught me that being rich doesn't matter if you can't share. The man's hands trembled as he read each word. His daughter, whom he had tried to protect from the world with his money and control, had found purpose helping the less fortunate. While he accumulated wealth and assets, she discovered values he had forgotten existed. The last note was the most devastating. Daddy will never understand why I chose this. He thinks I need to be in a clean room with expensive doctors to be happy. But I'm happy here with my friend, helping those who need it. When I leave, I want her to know that she was the best thing that ever happened in my life. At that moment, kneeling in his daughter's makeshift hideout, the millionaire understood that he had lost much more than he imagined. He had not only lost a daughter, he had lost the chance to know who she really was, what her true dreams were, what made her genuinely happy. When he finally emerged from the tunnels, it was already dawn. He drove through the empty city, his mind processing the discoveries. His daughter had found something that all his money could not buy, a true purpose and a genuine friendship. Arriving home, he found the stepmother awake in the living room, waiting for him with an expression of contained fury. "Where have you been? I spent the whole night worried," she said, but her concern seemed more related to her own security than to his well-being. "Discovering who my daughter really was," he replied, exhausted. "Your daughter is dead. When are you going to accept that and focus on the son who is coming?" The millionaire stared at her for a long moment. "She didn't die in the tunnels of the hospital, and until I find out where she is, I can't think about anything else." "So you're choosing a ghost over your real family," said the stepmother, placing her hand on her belly again. "You're choosing a morbid obsession over our future." The silence that followed was laden with tension. The man realized he was being forced to make an impossible choice, his search for the truth or his family's stability. But how could he move on, knowing that his daughter had discovered a happiness that he had never been able to provide her? That night, lying in bed next to his pregnant wife, he made a decision that would change everything. No matter the personal or financial cost, he would find the beggar girl and discover where his daughter had chosen to be, even if it meant losing everything he had built. 2 months later, the annual winter festival transformed the city into a sea of lights and memories. It was a local tradition for families to gather at this time to honor those who had passed away, lighting candles and sharing stories. The millionaire watched from his office window, seeing the families walking through the streets with their shimmering candles, when he spotted a familiar silhouette in the crowd. The beggar girl was there, holding a small candle, walking alone among the families. Without hesitating, he abandoned everything and ran to the street, desperate not to lose her again. "Wait!" he shouted, pushing through the crowd with difficulty. The child turned around, her big eyes reflecting the light of the candles around her. "You were looking for me," she said, not as a question, but as a simple observation. "For months," he replied, breathless. "I need to know where my daughter is. I found the hideout in the hospital tunnels. I saw the drawings, the notes." "Then you started to understand," said the girl, beginning to walk. "Come with me." She led him through streets he had never explored, even though he had lived in that city for decades. They arrived at an abandoned area of the industrial zone, where old factories had turned into makeshift shelters for the homeless. There, hidden among the rubble of an old building, was a place that defied all expectations. Dozens of children lived there in a surprisingly organized community. It wasn't just a shelter, it was a home created by themselves, with their own rules, shared responsibilities, and a mutual care that deeply touched the rich man's heart. "She came here every day," the beggar girl explained, pointing to a wall covered in drawings. "She brought food, medicine, but mostly she brought hope." The millionaire approached the wall, and his heart nearly stopped. Hundreds of drawings by his daughter covered the surface, but these were different from the ones he had found in the tunnels. Here, the birds weren't flying alone. Each drawing showed flocks of birds flying together, taking care of each other, building collective nests. "She taught us that we didn't have to be alone," said an older child, about 8 years old, approaching timidly. "She said even the smallest birds can fly far when they have a family." The man felt tears stinging his eyes. "When was the last time she was here?" 3 days before she passed," the beggar girl replied, "but she left something for you." The child led him to a special corner of the shelter, where there was a small chest made of recycled wood. Inside, he found a collection of letters that his daughter had written but never sent. Each envelope was marked with different dates, covering the last 6 months of her life. The first letter, dated 6 months ago, shattered him. "Daddy, today I discovered that being rich doesn't mean having money. It means having people who truly care about you. The children here have taught me more about happiness in a week than I've learned in my whole life in the mansion. They don't want my expensive toys or my designer clothes. They just want me to be myself." Another letter revealed, "I tried to tell you about my friends, but you always change the subject to talk about treatments and doctors. I'm not angry, Daddy. I know you love me, but you love the idea of keeping me alive, not the idea of letting me live." As he read, the millionaire discovered that his daughter had developed an elaborate plan over months. She hadn't simply run away. She had carefully organized a new life for herself, a life where she could make a real difference in the lives of other children. "She switched places with a girl who was very sick," explained a child of about 6 years old. "The girl's name was Sophia, and she was going to pass in a few days. Your daughter said that if she went instead of Sophia, the girl could use the hospital room and have a chance." The millionaire's world collapsed again. She sacrificed herself?" "No," said the beggar girl firmly. "She chose. She said she could finally do something that really mattered, that she could save a life instead of just wasting her own." At that moment, an elderly man approached the group. It was clearly the doctor who had cared for his daughter in the hospital, but now he was wearing simple clothes and carrying a bag of medical supplies. "Dr. Henderson?" questioned the millionaire, recognizing him immediately. "What are you doing here?" The doctor sighed deeply before answering. "Your daughter asked me a question that changed my life. Doctor, are you saving lives or just prolonging suffering? Since then, I've been coming here every week to care for these children for free." "Did you know what she was planning?" "I suspected. In the last few days she asked me about Sophia, about how much time the girl had, about whether there would be a chance to save her with proper treatment. When I found out what had happened, I understood that your daughter had found the only way to give meaning to her own suffering." The doctor paused, his eyes fixed on the ground. "She asked me for something specific before she left. She asked that when you came looking for her, and she was sure you would. I give you this." He held out an envelope sealed with the millionaire's name written in his daughter's familiar handwriting. With trembling hands, the man opened the final letter. "Daddy, if you're reading this, it means you finally understand where I chose to be. I'm not in a physical place that you can visit, but I'm alive in every child I've helped, in every smile I've brought to this place, in every life I've been able to touch with true love. You always wanted to protect me from the world, but I wanted to embrace the world. You gave me all the privileges that money can buy, but I discovered that true wealth is in being able to help others. Sophia is alive because of my choice, and these children have food and medical care because of my medicine and jewelry sold. I'm not asking you to understand, Daddy. I'm asking you to see that for the first time in my life, I was truly happy. I found my purpose, I found my chosen family, and I found a way to make my life mean something beyond my own existence. Please, take care of them as you took care of me. They need what you can offer, but mostly they need what I learned you always had, a heart capable of loving deeply." When he finished reading, the millionaire realized that all the children in the shelter were around him, watching him in respectful silence. They were children of different ages, each with their own story of abandonment and struggle, but all united by the legacy that his daughter had left behind. "She said you would come," murmured the beggar girl. "She said that when you were ready to listen with your heart instead of your head, you would understand that she didn't leave. She transformed." That night, surrounded by children who knew his daughter better than he ever had, the millionaire finally understood the magnitude of his loss and the beauty of his discovery. He had lost a daughter, but found a purpose that transcended all his wealth and all his previous ambitions. 6 months after the discovery of the shelter, the millionaire's life had completely transformed. His construction company was now working on a special project, the construction of a permanent support center for vulnerable children on the same land where the makeshift shelter operated. But it wouldn't be a cold and bureaucratic institution. It would be a true home, planned with the help of the children themselves. The stepmother had left the mansion 3 months ago, taking with her a generous alimony and the promise that the son she was expecting would be taken care of financially. She couldn't accept the new direction that her husband's life had taken, choosing to build her future away from that insane project, as she used to call it. "You're wasting all the wealth we've built," were her last words before leaving. Throwing away years of stock investments and profits to play savior. But the millionaire had discovered something that all his money had never been able to buy: inner peace. Every day spent with the children of the shelter taught him something new about the true meaning of wealth. On that special morning, he arrived at the construction site accompanied by a surprise. Sophia, the girl who had been saved by his daughter's choice, was there. Now 7 years old and completely recovered, she had become one of the most active children in the shelter. "Uncle," said Sophia, running up to him with a drawing in her hands, "I made this for you." It was a drawing of 2 adult birds, taking care of several small birds in a large and cozy nest. In the center, a small bird with golden wings flew above all the others, protecting them. "Is this the golden bird?" he asked, pointing to the central figure. "It's your daughter," Sophia replied with simplicity. "She's always taking care of all of us, even when she's not here." At that moment, the beggar girl approached. In the last few months, she had transformed into the natural leader of the children, organizing the daily activities and taking care of the little ones with an impressive maturity for her 4 years. "There's someone who wants to meet you," she said, taking the millionaire's hand. She led him to a reserved area of the land where he found a young woman, about 25 years old, sitting in a wheelchair. Her eyes were gentle, but they carried a deep sadness. "This is the father of the girl who saved me," the beggar girl said to the woman. The young woman looked up, and the millionaire felt a shock of recognition. "You're Sophia's mother," she completed, extending her trembling hand. "My name is Claire. Your daughter not only saved my daughter, she saved our whole family. Claire began to tell her story. She was a single mother who had lost her job when Sophia became ill. Without money for private treatment and with public health offering only basic care, she had lost all hope. When your daughter appeared at the hospital and insisted on switching places with Sophia, I thought it was crazy. But then I understood that she had seen something that I couldn't see, that some people are born to be bridges between different worlds. The millionaire felt a lump in his throat. She was always like that. Even small, she worried more about others than herself. Sophia tells me about her every day, Claire continued. About the stories she told, about how she taught the children to draw birds, about how she said we can all fly if we have someone who believes in us. At that moment, Dr. Henderson arrived for his weekly visit, carrying his usual bag of medical supplies. In recent months, he had become much more than just a volunteer doctor. He was a confidant and advisor to the millionaire. "How is the construction progress?" the doctor asked, observing the structures that were beginning to take shape. "It will be ready in 2 months, the millionaire replied. "But doctor, I need to ask you something that has tormented me for months. Tell me, my daughter, did she suffer at the end? When she made the choice to switch places with Sophia?" The doctor was silent for a long moment before answering. "She came to me 2 days before making the final decision. She asked if I believed that some people were born with a specific purpose. She said she had spent her whole life feeling that she was wasting something important, and that she had finally found her reason for being." He paused, his eyes fixed on the horizon. "She didn't suffer, she shone. In the last few days, she radiated a peace that I had never seen in any patient. She said she was finally truly living, not just existing." This revelation brought the millionaire a relief he didn't know he needed. For months, he had carried the guilt of not having been able to save his daughter, but now he understood that she didn't need to be saved. She needed to be understood and supported in her choice. "There's something else she asked me to tell you," the doctor continued. "She asked that when the center was ready, you know that this was always her dream. That you transform your pain into purpose, as she transformed her illness into hope." That afternoon, as he walked through the shelter observing the children playing, the millionaire noticed something extraordinary. Each of those children carried a piece of his daughter's spirit. Sophia drew with the same passion for birds. The beggar girl cared for others with the same dedication. Other children sang the songs she had taught, shared the stories she had told, perpetuated the kindness she had planted. "She didn't leave," he murmured to himself, finally understanding the complete truth. "She multiplied." 3 weeks later, the center was officially opened. There were no pompous speeches or grandiose ceremonies. Just the children running through the new dormitories, playing on the playground built especially for them, and studying in the classrooms that would bear the discreet name of Freebird Space. On that first night in the new center, the millionaire tucked each child into their beds, a tradition that had begun during the months of construction. When he arrived at the beggar girl's room, she handed him one last drawing. It was a portrait of a family. In the center, an adult man surrounded by dozens of children. Above all, a golden bird with its wings open, protecting everyone. "Your daughter said that when you were ready, you would know that she never really left," said the girl, snuggling under the covers. "She said that true love doesn't disappear when someone leaves, it grows and spreads." That night, for the first time in over a year, the millionaire slept in complete peace. He had lost a daughter, but gained dozens of them. He had discovered that his greatest wealth was not in his investments or dividends, but in the ability to continue the legacy of love that his daughter had begun. 2 years later, the Freebird Center had become a reference in the region. More than 100 children had found there not only shelter, but a true family. Sophia had become a talented artist, specializing in drawings of birds that she sold to help the center. The beggar girl had learned to read and write, becoming the official storyteller of the stories left by the millionaire's daughter. And on a special wall of the center, a simple plaque read, "In memory of all the birds who choose to fly, so that others can learn to use their wings." The millionaire had finally understood that the true meaning of life was not in accumulating wealth, but in planting seeds of hope that would continue to bloom long after we are gone. His daughter had not died. She had transformed into something infinitely greater and more lasting than any fortune could be. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment on what you thought of my story, giving it a rating from 0 to 10, and thank you very much.